Neshama Franklin. Neshama, come on up.
I'm smaller than Daya. Well, if you're anything like me, growing up feeling weird and lonely, you can't imagine there's anyone out there for you. Well, there was someone for me, but he came out of left field, which was absolutely appropriate. I was working as the transcript clerk at the registrar's office of Columbia University. I was 18 years old and I was virtually unemployable. I had flunked out of high school, I couldn't finish my papers, I typed very badly, and what were my parents going to do with me? Well, they called in a favor of an old nanny who had risen in the world and was now working at the Columbia University, and she shoehorned me into this job. And also at the registrar's office were two young men. They were army buddies who had come to make their fortune in the big city. You don't exactly make your fortune at the registrar's office, but there they were. One was from the South, from Lynchburg, Virginia, Ed, and the other was from Rockford, Illinois, John. John was putting together the computer system, and this is how old it was. It was punch cards and rods. That's what he was doing. Now, I caught the attention of these young men because I was a bohemian and I wore a peasant blouse with no bra. And so every time I leaned over the Xerox machine, they got an eyeful. And Ed was the one who caught my attention first because he was so exotic with that honeyed southern accent. So after work, every night we'd repair to the West End Bar and Grill, the three of us, kind of like an Upper West Side Jules and Jim. And I would sit next to Ed and sup up the pheromones. But, you know, Ed was maybe a little cowed by me. However, John, on the other side of the booth, he was very lively, he was very witty, he was a little combative. We had quite a lot to say to each other. And Ed got scared. Ed fled, wild, braless, Jewish girl. And, you know, back in Virginia, he had a fiancée I didn't know anything about. But there were me and John kind of leaning together like two legs of a three-legged stool. And guess what? The pheromones started to flow. And I know exactly when it happened. We were lying on the taupe wall-to-wall carpet in my parents' taupe living room above Central Park West, behind a wing chair, which I thought would kind of shield us. And I was running my hand over his silky, ample hair and over his broad forehead and down his nose, which felt larger than it looked. But then the lips, oh, what sensual lips. John could not only talk, he could kiss. And so, guess what? We started to live together. This was long ago when you didn't do such things. And so I went from my parents' apartment to this peculiar little room with a Murphy bed. But we tried to cover it up by coming in different entrances to the registrar's office. You can't fool people, especially old nannies. And so every time I passed her desk, she was German, she would mutter, "Well, when are you going to get married? It's time to get married. You should get married." John and I were sitting on the Palisades high above the Hudson River, which is a wild place next to a metropolitan area. And I said to John, "You know, Amelie thinks we should get married. What do you think?" And he said, "I don't know, it never even occurred to me. You want to get married?" And out of my mouth leapt, "Yes!" which really surprised me. And out of my chest leapt my heart and plunged to the bottom of the Hudson River and popped back up. But in that millisecond of time, I thought, what am I doing? I'm only 19 years old. I have been kind of sexually adventuresome, but there are so many men out there, and who is this tall, skinny guy from Rockford, Illinois. But we did get married. And I want to tell you a secret. It's really good to meet your heart's desire before the pheromones start to pop, because you really know what you've gotten there, a fabulous companion. So in any case, we were married for 35 years. We had 2 children and a grandchild. And then, indeed, death did us part. And I was standing with my hands on him, and I felt his soul actually leap out of his body. And at that moment, my heart did another leap out into the cosmos. And it returned to me. And it returned to me a life of an independent woman, the second half of my life. And I discovered I actually love it.